this was all circulating around the base, that a giant had been killed, but no one was supposed to talk about it.
I saw 3 long, bony fingers reach up underneath the door, curl up to grab it, and then disappear.
When he came over to me, dude, he slithered over to me.
And this giant comes out of the cave, and they're all frozen. And he starts running and firing at this giant. Well, the giant moves. He's got a spear in one hand, and he's running really fast and spears Dan and holds him up like this. Somebody yells, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. They basically decapitate him.
Got closer. When he got about 15 yards away from me, I raised that 12 gauge and I blowed his head off.
I feel something pulling at my leg, and I look over and there are 2 small gray entities pulling at me. And they're literally, I'm getting pulled off the bed.
I reached my hand into this bush and I touched air. Couldn't breathe and I couldn't move because I know I'm seeing a monster.
Yep. Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to The Confessionals. I am your host, Tony Merkel. Thank you for being here. If you've had an encounter or a story you'd like to share with me on the show, go ahead and shoot me an email. My email address is theconfessionals@theconfessionalspodcast.com. That's theconfessionals@theconfessionalspodcast.com. Or go to the website, theconfessionalspodcast.com, hit the contact section, and you can reach me that way as well. Either way works for me. Just get a hold of me. And if you want more of the show every week, if you love Tuesdays and you want more of it on Thursdays, we release an extra show on the website for members only. So if you want to become a member, go to theconfessionalspodcast.com, hit the join button, and sign up to become a member today for exclusive access to all the bonus episodes. Now, we have a great show planned for you today, but before we get into that, I want to remind everybody that on May 2nd, 2020, me, my wife, my son, my brother Jack, and my sister Tanya, we're all going to be at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference in the vendors area, having a table, meeting people, selling some merchandise. So if you want to come out and meet me, meet the family, meet the team, all you got to do is show up. If you want to just hang out in the vendors area, meet all the different vendors, meet the speakers, things like that. But if you want to actually attend the conference, go to the ohiobigfootconference.org and purchase your tickets today. Now, I know we have a great big holiday coming up this week. Everybody loves Valentine's Day. I personally don't celebrate Valentine's Day. I don't care about it. You can pity my wife if you want, but I just don't do it. I don't care. It is what it is. I tell her I love her every day. What do I need an extra day for? But I know that there's a lot of people that do celebrate Valentine's Day. And for you guys, we're running a promotion between today and Valentine's Day on February 14th. We're running a discount on the website. If you go to the store section on the website, everything in there except the beard oils are 10% off when you use the promo code LOVE, L-O-V-E, on checkout, and you will get 10% off your order. And we got a lot of cool stuff in the store, and people tell me I should be promoting the store more and more, and I don't. So here it is. I'm promoting the store. I actually just put out an I Killed Bigfoot t-shirt just a few weeks ago, and people are like, why didn't you announce it on the show? And I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't. But here it is. I Kill Bigfoot t-shirt. We have a Thought Criminal t-shirt based off of the book 1984 by George Orwell. We actually have a t-shirt that says the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. We have a conspiracy theorist t-shirt. And of course, we got a lot of t-shirts with logos on it of my face. And we have hoodies, baby apparel, socks, all that cool stuff, stickers, mugs. So go ahead and check it out if you're interested on theconfessionalspodcast.com. Hit the store page and it's all right there for you to view. So let's get to the show this week. We actually have a great guest coming on. We have Jeff, and Jeff shares a lot of different experiences that he's had throughout his life. Hint, I would highly suggest that you listen to the full episode today. But Jeff comes on and shares a lot of his different experiences, including a time where he thinks that he was sexually assaulted by either an incubus or a succubus or a person that was killed in that house. We're not totally sure, but he describes that experience, and I'm telling you that now because some of you let your kids listen to this show. It's a family event, but today it's up to you. But I'm just saying, giving you a heads up, you may not want the little ones to listen to today's show. With that said, let's get to it. All right, today we have Jeff on the show. Jeff, how are you doing, sir?
I'm really good, Tony. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. So you have a few experiences you'd like to share with us, and there is one that that you've had that I think we'll probably have some good conversation about. But I wanted to start you off with your friend Jeannie. Now, there is something to do with a rose that kind of appears and disappears, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what happened with that?
I was 19 years old. This was in 1968. And I went to a coffee house run by a church quite a lot. And there was a woman that worked there named Jeannie, who was my mother's age. But we became dear friends. And I got a call one evening from her niece that said that her niece said that Jeannie was blue and they were going to go out for dessert and I'd like to come. And I said, yeah, I'd like that. So she said, good, we'll be there in a half hour. Well, I sat down to study while I waited. And as I was sitting there, I had an experience unlike anything I'd ever had. I felt like I was watching another consciousness in my head. Almost, well, it did push me to the back of my head. And I was watching almost like I handed the controls of my body and my brain over to another entity. And it didn't feel malevolent or dark. It was an experience that was so unusual. And there was a knock on the door, and it was her niece. And I answered the door, and I heard myself say, I'm sorry, I can't go. And she said, what do you mean you can't go? You said you were going to go. Jeannie would be so disappointed. I said, no, can't go. And I closed the door, and I thought, what the heck? And I sat back down, and I began to feel this great heaviness. And I lifted up my hand. It took great effort to raise my hand, and to walk was just like I was in concrete. I tried to speak, and my voice was like a forced stroke. And I dragged myself into my bedroom and fell onto the bed and fell into a deep, deep sleep. Woke up in the morning fully dressed, got ready to go to school, went off to college, came back, cleaned up my place. And there in the living room, on one of the chairs, was something I'd never seen before. It was a red and green rose made out of ribbon. So the rose head, the flower was ribbon folded back and forth, and the green stem was wrapped around, looked like maybe wire. And there was a hat pin pushed into the stem. The thing was about a foot long. Well, I thought, I don't know where this came from, but I'll bet Jeannie would like it. So I put it in my backpack, and I wanted to apologize to her for not going. And I rode my bike over to her place. And I walked in, and I again heard myself say, I think this is yours, or I believe this is yours. And I thought, I didn't mean to say that. And she took it, and she said, this is mine. And she got deadly serious. And she said, my husband died 10 years ago yesterday. And he gave me this when we were first married. And throughout our marriage, it would disappear. And then when I really needed a boost, it would appear on my dressing table. And I haven't seen this since he died. Where did you get it? I told her the story and about how my body and voice had felt the day before. And she said he died of a progressive central nervous system disease, and that's exactly how he moved and how he spoke when he died. So that's the story. And my guess is that I was close to his beloved wife, and I would have the consciousness that was open to his connecting with me, and that somehow a portal was opened and that rose appeared. But that's the story.
Well, when you were saying about how like you heard yourself say something, were you like having an out of body experience, or was it more like you were just? It was like your body was like physically doing things that you weren't mentally preparing yourself to do.
Yeah. It was the second. I was definitely in my body, in my head, but watching my body, like I said, as if I had turned the controls over to another being.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Very, very unusual.
Yeah, I definitely would say that's unusual. I mean, and with the rose and stuff. I mean, you mentioned about a portal, and that's sometimes I wonder. Like, I guess what you just said, I mean, is as good as anything as far as a portal goes. I mean, I've had this conversation with other people where, do you think it's, it's in one location and then just physically disappears and then travels invisibly to another location and then reappears? Or does it, like, if somebody were to be able to watch it, would it like just move on its own to another location? But I think a portal sounds like a pretty good, estimation as to what could be happening when things disappear and reappear.
Yes. And of course, I think all of us have had that experience you spoke about. Like, you leave your keys someplace, you go back and look for them. They're not there. And you look 3 times over and then they're there. So who knows? I think that's, who knows? In that case, it may be something as simple as something like a poltergeist in your house. Whereas this, I think there's something more to it. Maybe it's the same phenomenon, but I never met her husband, and she and I maintained our friendship until her death. But that was one of a kind, that one.
Yeah. So what happened with your daughter? I mean, your daughter was, 4 years old, and she had some things going on in her bedroom, right?
Yes. I lived in a house at that point. It was 1988, and I'd moved into this house in 83. It had belonged to my mother's second husband. After my dad died, she remarried. And this fellow's wife had died in that house. And from what I had been told by his children, she had a very unhappy life and a very difficult death. Well, my daughter was 4, and I would sleep on a dime. I'd be the parent that would awake when either of our children were fussing at all. And I went into her room, and she was tossing back and forth and saying, "Leave me alone, leave me alone." And by that time, I had a lot of experience with disembodied entities, with the souls of those who are kind of hanging around the earth because of unable to let go. And I was familiar with the sensation of being in the presence of, like I said, a disembodied entity, kind of a tingling, an energetic feeling that you could feel that there was another presence. And that was such in my daughter's room. Well, I would pray. My first reaction was anger. Just leave her alone. And I would, just kind of battle. Well, then I thought, probably the greater good would be to pray for their release from whatever it was, and not be angry, but try to be compassionate. And I would pray and say the Lord's Prayer. And, well, it continued. This pattern continued, not nightly, but probably a few times a week. We had a friend that was staying with us, and he woke up and went into her room with me, and he felt the energy, and he got his Bible and let it fall open and dropped his finger, and he said this is a technique that he had used, and it inevitably pointed at some wisdom that related to the situation. Well, where he pointed in the Bible was the 91st Psalm, and the line was something like, "And thou shalt protect us from pestilence by night," from negativity by night. So we left his Bible open in her room, but boy, this thing continued. One night, her covers were pulled completely off the bed onto the floor at the foot of the bed, as if someone grabbed the top of the covers and just gave them a great pull, and they landed in a rectangle on the floor, not kicked off, but pulled off. And again, my daughter kept saying, "Leave me alone." Well, I would do this soul battle with whatever that energy was, and then it stopped. And it stopped just at the point that the woman who died, her daughter, began to have seizures and went into a coma and died in the hospital. And I think that what happened in that case was that the woman who had died, was wanting to pull my daughter over, pull her over to the other side to have her die so she would be in the world of spirit with her. And when that didn't work, she found her own daughter and was successful in pulling her over, because whatever the phenomenon was, it stopped in my house and didn't recur again.
Does your daughter remember this?
Vaguely. Yeah, she said she doesn't remember much from her childhood. We divorced when she was, or separated when she was 8, and that trauma perhaps blocked some memories.
Yeah, I don't remember much from my childhood either, to be honest with you. And I had a rough childhood, very rough childhood, and I do wonder sometimes if like my mind, worked against itself and blocked stuff out just so I wouldn't remember certain things. But
yeah, Tony, I think you're right. I think we are selective in our memory, and we can't, we know we can't handle a lot of negativity, so we're selective.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I just it's one of those things where your mind is, it's complex. And I just know that when I look around and I hear other people talking about, things that happen in their childhood and stuff, I'm like, how do all these people remember all this stuff that happened years ago, Because I remember certain things, highlights and things like that, but I don't remember half the stuff that, like people say, when we were kids, we used to go do this. And like, I don't remember that kind of stuff at all.
Yeah. My memory is, I swear I remember circumcision when I was like a few days old.
Yeah. Wait, you actually do remember that?
Yeah.
That's incredible. I think that's an anomaly. I don't think that's a norm. Like that's crazy. You actually remember that? Wow.
I do. Yeah, I remember. I remember many, many experiences, and it's almost as if. Well, it is. I at the time I thought, this is important. I'm going to remember this. I sort of programmed myself to drop down a memory marker.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's really fascinating. Well, why don't you talk to us about this other experience you had? Now, you're in a house, and I guess you were seeing like a decaying skull type of face, right?
Oh boy, yeah, that was. I had moved into a house that was going on 100 years old, and a great old place, but the problems there began almost as soon as I moved in, and I woke up with the experience of as if I was being anally raped. This energetic sensation, terrible, horrible. Jumped out of bed screaming, and it happened repeatedly. And I had the intuition that there had been someone killed in that house that during some kind of homosexual activity gone awry, gone terribly wrong. And I was really pursuing it in meditation and prayer and talking to other people I knew that had psychic ability. And I had a dream, and in a dream, a statue, we know how dreams are, anything is possible. The statue said, "You're looking for Ed D'Amore." Ed D'Amore. Well, I knew where the statue was. It was at the north gate of a very famous cemetery called Lakeview Cemetery, where John D. Rockefeller and President James Garfield are buried. So I called the cemetery, and now they had no Ed D'Amore there. Well, I called every cemetery I could think of that was north of the position in the dream. And then one of my friends said, sometimes in dreams, north, south, up, down are reversed. And I thought, well, so maybe it was south. I called the cemetery. I didn't think there were any cemeteries south of there. And I said, by any chance, is there a cemetery, north of your position? So yes, I forget what I said earlier about south. In the dream, I thought it was facing south, but now I'm thinking, could it be north? And the cemetery director said, yes, there is a small cemetery called the East Cleveland Cemetery we just have taken over. And we've cleaned it up. There have been no burials there since the 50s, but yes, we have that cemetery under our control now. And I said, do you have the death records? Yep. And I said, could you look up, is there an Ed D'Amore buried in that cemetery? And he said, yes. Yes, here he is. So I checked with the Historical Society and found that he was a single man who was buried in 1945. And his only survivors were his parents. Doesn't mean that he was homosexual, of course, but it fits the profile of, first of all, the precise name. And I found where he was buried. And so in that case, I think somehow Ed D'Amore wanted someone to recognize his soul's plight. And when I did that, the attack stopped. But the house continued to have these very, very attacks by disembodied entities. I was estranged from my girlfriend. I was sleeping in my music studio on the third floor. And I woke up with a full body attack. I had this like I talked about sensing a disembodied entity by kind of a tingling, like a chills, almost like chills. But this is something that's not in your body's energetic experience. You're feeling it as an intrusion. And in this case, I could feel it head to toe. And this entity was pressing into my body, wanting to take over my body in totality. Much like Jeannie's husband had, with my permission, there was nothing negative. I watched him move in temporarily. In this case, it was an entity forcing and wanting to take me over. And I could see his face, and it was this horrible, decaying skull. Just ghastly. Well, I pressed it out. I prayed. I always with prayer, always asking for divine help, beseeching the divine for assistance, and whatever one's spiritual orientation is. I think if we can connect to that higher, to God in whatever form we understand God. I'm Christian, so I would pray to Jesus, and I would pray the Lord's Prayer, and always in these cases. So I'd fight it off. Well, I learned that there's a phenomenon called a walk-on. And a walk-on is where someone's body is taken over by another entity, and their personality, their soul, is forced out. And this happens often when people are drinking, or are drunk, or even in the zone of shopping. I've heard that the souls that want to do this hang around malls and bars, places where people are not conscious of their consciousness, if that makes sense. They're not paying attention to who they are. They're externally focused, or depress their own consciousness by drinking or drugging. So this happened several times, and I eventually that woman moved out, and I fell in love with my future wife, and she moved into the house with me. And she's clairvoyant, so she's able to see disembodied entities. I only sense them. She sees them. Well, we began to have, she'd wake up screaming. I'd feel this terrible energy, and I'd go into soul battle with it and force it away. And she said that she was seeing a man's form leaning over her, arms outstretched, wearing old-fashioned prison stripes, and the face was a decaying skull, just like I had seen. The only time I had ever seen any of these disembodied entities that I would be doing battle with. So that happened repeatedly, and she also saw other disembodied entities. She saw a skeleton and benign beings, like a prairie woman with her children, and but these attacks continued, and no matter what we did, we couldn't end it. So we decided we would use a Native American technique called smudging. And cedar and sweetgrass, different grasses are wound into braids, and then maybe 2 inches across in a stick, and you light them, and the smoke goes up, and you take a feather fan and fan it into every corner of every room in your house, even your closets. And you can buy these even online if you look for smudge, SMUDGE, smudging materials. And so we smudged the house, and as she was doing the smudging, I'm at this point totally blind, so I couldn't see to help with that. But I would be praying, and I in this case I prayed. I said, Jesus, send your strong angels to gather up these souls. We're not angry with them. We just are. We want them to be where they belong, in the light, in the world of spirit, and we want them to stop attacking us. So I prayed that prayer. We went throughout the entire house, and a couple nights later, we woke up, and we have this signal that if she is seeing something, she'll tap me, or if I'm feeling something, I'll tap her. So our consciousness is joined in that moment, and we can use her clairvoyant ability to see what's going on, and I can use my abilities to battle off whatever's negative. Well, she woke up, and she was making a sound that was like, not fear, but awe. And it's in the Bible, it's written, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto them, and they were sore afraid. And this was that, not fear, but just awe of and the word awesome is so overused, but awe in the sense of being in the presence of something that is so powerful that you are, you realize you're with great humility how small you are. Well, she was making that sound, and I was beginning to say the Lord's Prayer, but I could barely get the words out. It was, the energy in the room was so powerful. And what she saw were two figures. This was an old house with 9.5-foot ceilings. And these beings were as tall as the room. They were in shimmering robes, androgynous, neither male nor female, and looking at us with, she said, with great love and compassion. So what happened? I asked for Jesus to send his strong angels to take these souls back to where they belong. and these angels appeared to us. And we were so thunderstruck by the experience. It was so humbling and awe-inspiring and so reverent, so great. I'd had an experience when I was a young man that I used to, if I was in the experience, if you're experiencing a ghost, I lived in a house where 3 o'clock in the morning on the dot, I'd wake up to go to the bathroom, and in the hallway, I'd feel this entity. And I was so excited and thought, look at me, I can communicate with ghosts. And I would open myself, what do you want? Who are you? And another wise friend said, don't do that. You don't want to encourage ghosts. They don't belong here. They're stuck. And by encouraging them, you're adding to their energy and prolonging their time of being in the wrong place. When we die, our energy, our soul, is given the opportunity to travel up a tunnel of light into the world of spirit. And if we choose not to, and that is a choice one can make, we are on this plane. And my understanding is that we get a couple opportunities, and then and then we don't, and then we're just stuck here. So whenever any of these experiences happened where I knew I was in the presence of a disembodied entity, I would pray the Lord's Prayer and ask for protection, because it didn't occur to me that what I was experiencing could be a blessing, a good thing, because I was just programmed to ask for protection and ask the energy to move along. So here are these angels, and I was unable to, if I had known that I was in the presence of angelic beings, I think I would have opened myself fully rather than praying. But prayer is probably always a good thing. Anyway, that's how that ended. Although a couple weeks later, and Tony, I'm telling you the truth, and I can't tell you why these things have happened, but I know they did happen. But we awoke, and again, my wife was in a state of awe, and Jesus appeared to us and wasn't looking at us, but just in our direction. Again, my wife, Christy, said that his look was of love, of course, greatest love and compassion, and not looking directly at us because we couldn't have taken the wattage. It was it was so great, an energy that I was trying to pray, but the words were just, my body, my energy was in this current that made speech impossible. So that ended any negativity in that house. It was a beautiful place to live after that, and we moved from there. I was taking care of my younger brother, who had a severe cognitive disability. I had gotten him out of a state institution and established a supported living home for him. And when he died in 2014, we moved high into the Rockies, where my wife had always wanted to live. And do we have time for another story?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is, we were in this A-frame, and my wife saw this guy walk through our bedroom wearing dirty long johns, and he kept appearing. And then he was bending over her with a cloth toward her face, and she woke up screaming, thinking he was trying to suffocate her. Well, after a while, we decided we needed some help with this. So we have a friend who's a very powerful medium. And we went to her, and the way she works is you send her 3 questions, and she prays and meditates and gets her spirit guides involved. And then you call her, and she engages with the spirit world and tells you what's going on. And we've talked to my brother after his death. Very powerful. If you come upon a medium that really knows their stuff, it can be very comforting. Well, she said that we were interacting with a guy named Clem, who had been a gold miner on that land, and he was killed for his mule and his cook stove. And he had been jilted in love. And because of that, when it came time, when he died, when he was murdered, he didn't leave because his emotions were so tied to this plane of existence. So numerous opportunities came. He didn't leave. And finally, he was stuck here. So she sent her spirit guides got involved. And lo and behold, his mother was still on the other side and had not reincarnated. And his mother came. He had a reunion with her, and off they went into the world of spirit, and that ended that. And we then found that there was a mine on our land. In the 1870s, individual miners would dig what they call glory holes, 10 feet across, and they go 10 feet down. And this mine had gone 3 feet down, and then a side shaft was beginning to be dug, where probably he had discovered some gold, or the people who killed him had, and then abandoned. But so that's a story of Clem. The other thing that happened in that house was we were given a grandfather clock. We saw this ad, free grandfather clock. I'd always wanted one, so we picked this thing up, and boy, the guy couldn't wait to get rid of it. And we had it about 24 hours, and I'm just going to sleep, and I get the sensation of getting punched in the face. Startled awake. What was that? What's going on? Well, this happened repeatedly. And my wife could see this about a 3-foot tall being that was like a cloaked being. She couldn't see his face, like wearing a hooded cloak. And then in my music studio, things would fly off the shelves, a box of harmonicas, a drum fell over of its own accord. So we again contacted our friend, and she said that this gets into some wild stuff, as if everything else hasn't been wild. But she said that I saw that there was a being, a monk, who was this little guy in the cloak had kind of captured. And I grabbed the little parasite, and the other soul was able to escape and be taken into heaven by angelic beings. And she described this guy just the way my wife had seen him, and she said that it was a parasitic being that didn't belong on this plane, that had attached itself to this monk, who for some reason, it was attached to the grandfather clock. The monk had been attached to a being, another person rather. And when the person died, the grandfather clock was there. And because it had belonged to the person, the monk stayed connected to the grandfather clock. And with this parasitic being, not allowing it to move on. So by my grabbing the parasitic being in my astral body, I allowed this monk to move on. And twice during this episode, I woke up thinking, I'm at the bathroom door. Why am I at the bathroom door? And my wife woke up and saw me in bed and saw my astral body at the bathroom door. Those things happened a couple times. So our friend said that that little being that didn't belong here, her spirit guides were able to grab and send it back to the plane of existence where it belonged. So I'll tell you, Tony, I don't know why I've had all these experiences. I don't think I'm anything special. I'm not. I'm just a guy, but I've had a spiritual life. I've always had a connection to God, prayer, meditation, and I think maybe that has given me, opened me in a way that has allowed all these experiences to happen to me. But I can't do anything at will. I mean, all I do is try to keep clear and keep negativity out of my heart. Forgiveness is, I think, the hardest spiritual work, to not hold grudges or negativity.
You certainly had a life of, experiences on the spiritual level, whether you want to say it's paranormal, spiritual, supernatural. Has this, process that you went through your entire life, I'm assuming, it's developed you spiritually to a certain point, at least. Do you feel like going through some of these experiences that you've had, do you think all these experiences have a positive outlook, at the end of the day, because you gained something from it? Or were some of the stuff you still don't really understand why you went through it? Like you said about the one entity, that it seemed like they were, trying to rape you. That sounds like an incubus to me, And so,
what is that? What's an incubus?
Well, there's incubus and succubus, and they're both entities, demonic entities that try to have sex with people while they sleep. And the succubus,
really?
Yeah, succubus tend to go after men, and incubus tend to go after women. And I don't know what you had. I mean, because it was trying to penetrate you. So was it an incubus or was it a succubus? I don't know. Or maybe it was this Ed Damore that was just trying to get a point across to you. You know what I mean?
I've heard those words, incubus and succubus. I've never heard them defined. You have so much knowledge from your interviews and your study. That's very helpful, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a chance to look into it and stuff, I mean, maybe, some of the information you gain would help you maybe understand your experiences a little bit more than you already do.
Absolutely. The word demonic is, the way I look at these experiences is, I've dealt with entities that were stuck on this plane, and wanted to get their interests were. Now, in the case of Clem in the gold mine, he was a good guy. And he did he did say that through this medium that he wasn't trying to suffocate my wife. He was just wanting to show her that in case of fire, put a wet cloth over your face to breathe.
So it was more looking out for than trying.
Yeah, exactly. And he, that was his energy was good. In the case of that anal rape, I of course tied it to Ed D'Amore because I was told you're looking for Ed D'Amore, and once I tracked down Ed and his story, as much as I could learn of it, it stopped. So my assumption was it was.
Yeah, that's a good assumption. I mean, that's a fine assumption. It's interesting stuff, man. Now, before we get out of here, I wanted to bring up something that you had said in the emails that you do have a memoir, right?
Yes.
Now, you self-published that?
I did. Yeah, I've had a publishing company, a book publishing and a music publishing company with two different licenses since the 80s. I'm a songwriter, and I developed materials for schools on anti-bullying and acceptance of kids with disabilities and anyone who's devalued. But so I self-published it. It's called Grit, a family memoir on adversity and triumph. And it's on Amazon. If you look for Jeff Moyer, Jeffmoyer, Grit is the title, but it's also on my website. And like any self-published author, you make more money if people buy it through you rather than through Amazon. But thanks for mentioning that.
Sure. What's your website called?
JeffMoyer.com.
Wow, you're lucky you got JeffMoyer.com. That's such a, Moyer's a big popular last name and Jeff's a popular first name. I'm surprised that nobody else had JeffMoyer.com already taken.
Well, I got that 23 years ago.
Oh, okay. So you're the first person you're the first person on the internet back then, right?
Well, there are a lot of other Jeff Moyers, and I do. I'm glad I have that. But I would also say that I have music that is free. That is, if you just go to YouTube and look at Jeff Moyer, and there's for anyone that's grieving or who's facing death, I have an album called Peace, Sweet Peace that I developed for hospice. And that's available free of charge. You can just download it by asking for it. Jeff Moyer, Peace, Sweet Peace. And then I have an award-winning children's album called Maxwell, the Dancing Dog. And my documentary on state institutions like the prison where my brother was, Lest We Forget. And another album that's for families called We're People First. So, and love songs. Don't forget love songs for any of you lovers out there. So I've it's so hard to make a living as a musician or an author that I decided my intention was to get this music into the world, especially the music for hospice and people who are grieving. So I've gone the route of just putting it up so people can access it for free.
Well, that's really cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that with the audience and letting them know where to find your stuff. And Jeff, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences, man. You've been through a lot of stuff in life, and it's nice to hear people share those experiences.
Tony, you what you're doing is such a service to the world, and the way your openness and clarity and goodwill just shines through, and you're really a champion. Thank you very much for what you do.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, and thank you for coming on and being part of the show. without people like you, being open to sharing your stuff, the show wouldn't exist. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Tony. Thank you.
Well, that's the show, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, please share the show with your friends. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, email. I don't care how you share the show. Just share the show if you enjoyed it. And I just want to give a special shout out to all the people who are following us on Instagram. You guys have been really doing a great job sharing the show. I've been seeing it. And thank you very much for doing that. That's been amazing and awesome to see. So thank you very much. And until next week, friends, stay safe, take care, and remember, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. Bye. All right, so you just brought up that you were abducted, and you didn't tell me that on the main interview. What's going on here? What is this?
Well, when I was 5 years old, I have a very clear memory of being abducted by four. I suppose they were little grays, and they told me telepathically not to be afraid. They were going to teach me to fly. And I levitated down the stairs outside, and they levitated me down the neighborhood onto a little bluff. Then they said, now we're going to fly up. And I don't remember anything after that in that experience. But I had other experiences with particularly screen memories, that when you're abducted, you're given a memory often of a place that is not in your experience, that is in the alien's experience, to block the memory of what happened to you. And one was driving through a two-lane truck road in Texas in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden, I'm going up a very steep road with highly banked sides, and it raises up, and then the sides of the road level out, and I'm looking at a city like something from 1,000 years from now, just the most staggeringly advanced and strange city. And in those years, I had low vision, but with binoculars, I could see normally. And I had binoculars, and I saw a flying saucer hanging above the city. I studied it. It was purple with yellow lights around the edge. There was a space needle, not like the Seattle, but this thing was maybe 300 stories tall with a huge platform. And I thought, it's impossible. That is so thin. The needle went up, and the platform was so vast. But I was recording all of this onto a little tape recorder, and I got we turned a corner in the city. It was kind of into the outskirts now. I dropped the microphone, and I picked it up off the floor of the car, and looked out the window, and we were back on a two-lane truck road. I mean, just like that, it disappeared. So, and the final experience was I was teaching at Kent State, the summer course for teachers on my materials. And I always stayed in the same little motel. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and Tony, I was terrified. I couldn't move. I was under a bank of extremely harsh lights, like maybe 15 by 30 feet in panels, in squares. And I had the sense that the lights themselves were evaluating me in some way. Like I said, I couldn't move. I tried to scream. My voice didn't work. And in this state of terror, and I again went unconscious and woke up some hours later back in the room. And I've, you hear so many things about the different aliens and their intentions, and the ones that dealt with me meant me no good. Although, they would not. You never would put someone in a state of terror. And I think that there's a very good website called Allies of Humanity. And that's a place where people can read about what's going on and what's coming. And I think we're heading into a time when we're really going to need to stand together as a human race and say, this is our planet, and you have no business being here, and we are united against you. So I recommend that. But I don't. I suspect that somehow the alien experience and my ability to perceive disembodied entities, somehow they work together. I have no idea how, but that's been a part of my life too.
So you do think, because I was going to ask you this, so you do think there is some kind of correlation between these abductions and the spiritual side of your life and what you experienced?
Yes. Yeah. When I was a kid, a young man, I was interested in the tricks, telepathy, astral projection, telekinesis. And I wanted to learn how to do all those things. I thought that was spirituality. And what I learned, man, I wound up getting imprisoned by a woman that I think she definitely was connected to the aliens, if she wasn't alien herself, in part.
You were imprisoned by
30
her?
years. Well, yeah, I went into her company, and she eventually had me so terrified of her, she claimed that she ordered the death of Eisenhower, Edward Dirksen, and by God, later they died, and other terrible things of that sort. Either she could see the future, or she had some dark ability to connect it into causality. I don't know. But when I left her after 2.5 years of torture and spiritual torture, it was a still small voice within. It was my little tiny inner voice that said, "This is not right, and you must leave." And although I suspected she might be able to kill me, I did believe she could kill me. I knew that still small voice within, my connection to God, was more important, more powerful, and would protect me. So out of that experience, I learned that, boy, the tricks are not important. What's important is spirituality. It's different than paranormal abilities. But what's important is our connection to God, to right and wrong, to justice, and our commitment to living a life that's in accordance with those rules. That's all that's important. Know ye first is the kingdom of God. I'm giving you an interview and a half. I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You should have led with this, man. So, this lady that you worked for, you worked like as an employment status with her, but
no, I wasn't working. No, I was I had a young man with a backpack and guitar. I'd gone to California in 1968, seeking the paranormal. Seeking to be able to do telepathy and all that. And I had been studying that. Been studying how to open my mind and send thoughts and receive thoughts, and so she said, I have a place where young people live, and it's right in the ocean in Southern California. Why don't you come and check it out? So I did. I was at that point living in a commune in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and she was working for the owner of the commune.
It sounds like a cult.
So I'm sorry?
It sounds like a cult. Is that what it was?
I guess you could say it was a cult. She had true paranormal power. I don't know how to explain it. She was also a criminal and a con artist and a violent person. But she also could heal and had a great knowledge of spiritual and religious practices. And so I was initially hooked in by her, what she knew, and I did work for her. I mean, we were cutting firewood, to make a living. But, and there were a few other people that came in and out. When I left her, there were a total of 11 people in the house. And so when I left, she had a lot of people that had bought into her view of the world.
Jeff, what you're telling me, I swear, I don't know if I talked to somebody on the show, if it's an interview that hasn't been aired yet. I don't remember, but I've heard this story before. Like,
wow.
I kid you not. I feel like I've talked to somebody who had a very similar experience to yours. Almost.
Whoa, wow.
I feel like, honestly, either I talked to somebody or heard it in an interview somewhere, a very similar story, and it makes me feel like either I or somebody else talked to somebody that was involved in the same person as you, because you said there was a camp of people, right?
Yes, not a great number, but there were probably a couple dozen people in the 2.5 years that had been there that I knew of before me or during my time.
That's incredible.
It could be. I think I might have talked about this when I was on Sasquatch Chronicles. Maybe it was that interview. Maybe
I probably heard it there. Then that's probably where I heard it.
But it also, that experience also taught me never to doubt when someone says something that I've not had that experience. Never to doubt it, because the world is. I saw things and experienced things that were so not just unusual, but hard to explain, hard to wrap my head around. Just about the time I would think, okay, I've got her nailed. She's a con, that's all. Something would happen, and she would look at me and say, "Now do you believe me?" And I would just be dumbstruck. But I was initially attracted by her healing ability, and then I was controlled by my fear, because she could be so terrible and was so violent. Whew.
Do you remember what episode number that was on Sasquatch Chronicles?
535, maybe.
Okay, well, I knew I heard heard that somewhere, and it actually answers another thing that I was thinking, because when you were talking to me in the beginning of the interview, I was thinking to myself, his voice sounds so familiar. I feel like I've heard this guy's voice somewhere. But and now it's all coming back to me because you're the blind musician that I was.
Yeah, that's it.
Me and Wes were talking about you after he interviewed you. He called me and he was like, "I just interviewed this guy," and he was, because it's impressive. I wanted to ask you, one, are you able to be a musician right now as a blind man, or is that something that came later in life, or were you blind most of your life?
I started to go blind when I was 5, just at the time of the abduction. And I think that I was blinded by that experience. I think it was like an experiment. But just at that same summer, my brother was born, as I said, with a severe cognitive disability, and his needs were so great, and the crisis in the family so profound that my little problem with going blind just kind of it was off at the side. And but a piano teacher was told, my parents were told I was pretending I couldn't see. So they told the piano teacher I was pretending I couldn't see. And when he discovered that I really couldn't see, he refused to teach me any further. But that somehow subliminally taught me that if I could hear, I could play. If I could puzzle something out by ear. So I've taught myself to play 20 instruments by ear. And I've been a songwriter since I was 16, and 21 albums, and made my living as a musician for 15 years or so.
Wow, that's impressive, man. Well, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add this as like a probably when I produce this show, what I'll probably wind up doing is let's see here. I'll probably do the whole interview that we first did, and then because sometimes I like adding extra bonus material. I'll probably add this on the very end of the show, like after the outro music, like because I like giving extra stuff sometimes as a bonus content, but sometimes I make it like the song ends and then right away it kicks in, and sometimes I let it just dead air play for like a minute or 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden this kicks in, and it's for
that is so. I'll tell you, I've heard you say you do that, and I think, well, I never just let it roll and listen into air, but I'm going to do it from now on, man.
Yeah, it's not all the time. I mean, but it's just like that little reward for people who let the whole episode to the very last second play. Every once in a while I put some extra stuff on the very end, and I mean, I honestly, like, I put out well over 100 shows, and I probably did that on like 5 episodes, but they're scattered throughout. They're like little ghost episodes, Let
me ask you this: what did Wes think of me?
Oh, well, I mean, he doesn't call me about people he doesn't like. Let's put it that way. Good. Yeah, I mean, we if he's impressed by somebody, that's when he calls to talk to me about it and stuff like that. I mean, I don't remember what his comments were. I just remember him telling me about the upcoming show that he just recorded, and then I remember tuning in, and he kind of referenced it on a show I did a couple weeks ago. We did a censored show, and it was me, Wes, Dark Waters, and Timothy Renner, and he kind of referenced how he listens to my show, but I don't really listen to his show, and I do listen to his show, but I don't listen to it as fast as he would like me to listen to it, because I half the time I already know it's on the show before it even airs, and so yeah. I guess I'm a bad friend like that. But no, I remember when he told me about the interview he had just done with you. I remember tuning in and listening to your story, and I was fascinated by it. I was just listening to it while I was driving in my truck, and that's where when you started talking about it, I was like, I've heard this somewhere. Where did I hear this? Like, I was thinking maybe I heard either I talked to somebody or somebody else talked to somebody that you may have run into with the same lady. And then when you said Sasquatch Chronicles, it all connected in my head. I was like, that's where I know him from. Okay.
Well, Tony, this exchange really means world to me, because I thought after that interview that I had just gone too far and that I had introduced too many things that were so far out there that Wes was kind of shaking his head. So I'm glad to hear that.
Hey, thanks for watching the Confessionals on YouTube. If you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, and hit the like button. That would be a great help to me. And if you want more of the Confessionals on a weekly basis, every Thursday I come out with a special show just for members on my website. So if you want to check that out, go to theconfessionalspodcast.com, hit the join button, and become a member today. And every Thursday, you'll get a new show, and you can binge on previous shows, which there's almost 100 of them. So if you love the show, go ahead and check it out. But thank you very much for being here on YouTube and checking out the channel.